can't run from him. He has great plans for you.
But now and was blind.
A piece of him is still inside you.
But now
We will summon him.
I see.
It's here.
Are you certain?
Yes, it's right there.
So there's a moment at one point in this movie where one of the new characters shows Nell, the girl from the first movie who's now the lead of this film, shows her a video of one of the exorcisms from the first movie, the exorcism that actually happened at the end in the barn. She watches this video, or she is shown this video, and it's on YouTube, which kind of raises the question how it got there, but we'll get into that later. But the title of this video is Crazy Possessed Girl in Woods, and I think that should be the subtitle to this entire franchise, or just this movie. This movie should be called The Last Exorcism Part 2, Crazy Possessed Girl in the Woods. Because that's just a great title for a movie. It's better than The Last Exorcism Part 2, which is a title that doesn't make any sense, but whatever. Friday the 13th, the final chapter, was the fourth one in the series of 13 movies, so titles don't really mean anything, but at the same time, this is going to become a funny franchise with its titles. The Last Exorcism 2, The Last Exorcism 3, The Last Exorcism, the final chapter, The Last Exorcism 5. No, we really mean it this time. This is going to become a funny franchise with its titles. I'm looking forward to it. I'm not looking forward to the movies because this Last Exorcism Part 2, kind of a piece of shit. Not completely terrible, but it's not good. I could actually tell it wasn't good from the first frame of the film. And I'm not one of these people that will say something hyperbolic like, oh, you could tell right as the movie started, it was bad. This movie starts the same way that Rec 3 did, in the sense of, this moment in Rec 3 happens about 10 minutes into Rec 3, but the start of this film is a camera. You know, the camcorder that the documentary crew was using in the first movie. Even though in the first movie, it's not a camcorder, it's shoulder-mounted, big camera, professional film documentary camera. But in this movie, it starts off with the camcorder that apparently it's now a camcorder. It was laying on the ground, and the little battery light goes out, and it dies, which happens about 10 minutes into Rec 3 when Rec 3 transitioned into being a objective camera and not, found footage. Rec 3 was pretty much becomes terrible after that point. I'm not saying the first 10 minutes of Rec 3 were very good, they weren't. But Rec 3 becomes really bad once it transitions into being an objective camera movie. Rec 3 is pretty bad. I'll get into the Rec franchise at some point. But I knew right then that camera just sitting on the ground with the little battery light going out that, oh, we're not in for a treat here. We're in for... I'll talk about I'll get into it later. To begin with, my feelings on the first movie and the first Last Exorcism, I kind of brought it up in the Dark Skies review. I really liked The Last Exorcism. I didn't think I would. I thought I was going to fucking hate it. I saw it. I actually didn't get around to seeing it until a couple months after it was out on DVD. So this is way after all the, the blow up with the ending and, it's the debates over that movie. So I was, I was removed from that context, and I wasn't. I knew about it. I'd exposed myself to it, but I didn't let it affect me when I went into the movie. I still didn't really think I was going to like it that much. I thought it was just like, okay, it was going to be 90 minutes, and I'd be like, okay, well, that's all right. That was that? Okay. But actually, the movie really got me. And it basically comes down to Patrick Fabian, the lead, as Cotton. He's really, really good. And also, Nell's character, she was really good too. I forget the actress's name right now, but she's good in the first movie. Nell's kind of, even though Nell is the possessed girl in the first movie, she's still kind of only like a secondary character. The Last Exorcism is more about Cotton and Lewis, the father. It's not really about... It is about Nell because she's the possessed one, but it's more about her dad and how her dad is dealing with all this shit. which is, you know, one of the examples of the clever script that The Last Exorcism has. It does have a clever script. It's a very economical, very tight script, which is incredibly important. And the central premise, the central concept of this documentary crew is going to, you know, with the help of this pastor that's lost his faith and wants to, you know, do away with what he sees as a archaic and even dangerous practice. He wants to expose exorcisms for what they truly are. It's just, you know, some sort of psychological thing or just some people making it up. Just he wanted to expose it as a hoax, as a bust. And, you know, they answer the one letter where it's actually a possessed person. And that's clever, you know. It's not the best idea in the world. It's not a perfect movie. It has its problems. It has its flaws. The end does come out of left field, but there isn't. If you watch the movie, there is enough foreshadowing that if you're not paying attention, you might think it comes out of left field, even though it still kind of does in context. But it works. It really does. And I know a lot of people don't like the ending, but so you wanted the movie just to end with she was just making it all up? That's what you wanted the ending to be? Was she was just making it all up and the 90 minutes that you had just watched accounted for nothing and was completely pointless? That's what you wanted? All right. If that's what you want, that makes sense. If you don't want a proper close to your movie, if you don't want a proper third act, fine. I mean, okay. But basically, if you're complaining about the ending, if you're saying, you know, they shouldn't have done that, then you're basically saying that the movie should have just ended right then. The movie should have just been, oh, you're faking it, and then the credits should have started. So there wouldn't have been a proper ending. Anyways, yeah, this movie's not good. This second one is not good. There is good stuff in it, but it's... I saw it last night, so I'm actually kind of struggling. It's not very... it hasn't really put any hold in my memory. It's forgettable. That's a bad thing. There is good... Again, she's good in it. The girl playing Nell is good in it. And there's some good acting, you know, outside of her. Some of the other actors do a good job. The guy who plays Lewis is back, and he does a good job. But for the most part... It's not very good, and it kind of comes down to, like, because it looks nice, and I assume that I think the director involved was actually trying, and that it's weird because the script sucks, and that is the problem with the movie, is that the script is very, very bare bones. It's very simplistic. It's very cut and dry. It's awkward. Like, a lot of the scenes are just, like, characters staring at each other for like an extended period of time, and then they start doing stuff, you know? And then they start talking to each other. So it's like, what were they doing? Like, before the scene started, were they staring at each other for an even longer time? Or did one of them just, like, say something awkward, and then they were just, like, staring at each other? Or did one fart, and now it's, like, weird? Like, why are these characters just staring at each other? And then they talk after like 5 seconds. Is that just bad directing, or like is the script just like they stare at each other for 15 seconds and then they say something like that? What the fuck, you know? That's just weird. There are a couple creepy moments throughout this movie that kind of work, and there are actually a couple cool like possessed moments and exorcism-y moments in this movie that would have worked better in another movie. There's a scene where I assume the demon is like fucking her, but it's PG-13, so it's, you know, they can't really show anything. But she's like floating in the air, and this like it's really interestingly framed and filmed, and the movie looks really good. The movie has pretty high production value, but that scene in particular, the demon fucking her scene, it was very good, and just the way her body that was floating in the air like twirled around the room, and just nice. It's just filmed and looked cool. But that's the extent of this movie. The good in this movie. This is just a very, very dull, simplistic, kind of a little bit too straightforward, modern, crappy CGI exorcism movie. When I mean CGI, I mean PG-13 exorcism movie. It doesn't have any gore. It has one scene of a kid like slashing his throat, but they cut away when he starts doing it. And they did that in Would You Rather. There's a scene with a guy where a guy has to cut his eye with a razor, and basically in Would You Rather they go like this with the guy's hand. The camera goes like that with the guy's hand as he does it, and it's effective and it actually hurts. But with this, the kid starts to do it, and the camera goes like that, but then it cuts away to the girl, to Nell, just like, oh, screaming, because he did it in front of Nell. And it's like, okay. And you never see anything. The blood doesn't look real. There's like kind of like one small little line of blood. It's like he just cut his jugular open. It would be gushing. Realism. But it's really, this is just a very bland, very bad kind of coattail riding, kind of like the first movie, PG-13 exorcism movie. It has no structure as a script. It has no like heft. It's the only word I can use. It never feels like it's going anywhere or that it gets going. And like there's so many plot threads from the original movie that like this movie does not address at all. Like they don't explain what happened to the baby, what happened to the cult, where her brother is. Like they never tell you what happened to Cotton. I assume he died in the fire, but like you hear his voice on radios from time to time. But the movie, like, this movie doesn't feel like it's from the same franchise. And there are moments where Nell doesn't even feel like the same character, and it actually feels like the girl, I forget her name, I think it's like Emma Bell or something. It feels like she's playing the character completely different. And this movie takes place, like, this movie starts right after the events of the first movie, which that, like, right there raises a bunch of questions of, well, like, where the fuck is everybody? If this is right after that night, where did everyone just go? Why are they all gone now? Why can't they be accounted for? What about, like, the church in her town, in Nell's town from the first movie was a front for a cult. Well, why don't you look up the financial records of that church? You know? Like, there are ways to track these people down. There are ways to find out where these people are. And no one in this movie seems... And they all, like... They I think at some point they might have made reference to the fact that everyone kind of, like, died in the fire at the end. But, like, you can do a little bit more follow-up work than just everyone's dead. Like, okay, like, the state didn't care. You know? No one cared. It's just... Fire happened. It's over. You know? There's not a lot of dialogue in this movie also, which is, like, the first movie is dialogue aplenty. And that's actually one of the best things about the movie is that it has all this really rich, interesting dialogue. Like, the part where he slips the banana bread recipe in his sermon. Like, that's brilliant. That was really funny. That was really clever. And this movie just has nothing. This movie, again, it's just characters staring at each other for 30 seconds, and then someone will be like, oh, and someone else will be like, oh, and then they just look at each other again for like 5 seconds. Or 15 seconds, and then it's in the next scene. It's like, what the fuck? Like, it's scenes like that, and they all come off really awkward, and, like, just don't... It's just not a good experience, to be totally honest with you. It's very drab, it's very dull, it's very boring, and it's not... It's like, the first movie has subtlety, the first movie has subtext and foreshadowing. This movie is just... If this movie is trying to have subtext, it's incredibly obvious subtext. And it's hitting you in the face. And it's almost getting to the point where it's just the text of the film. There's this whole kind of lesbian thing going on throughout the whole movie. And that's cool. Hey, like, lesbians make everything better. But it's weird because it's like, okay, this movie is clearly just Nell's a lesbian as a character. Like, she has come out of being a demon. Or being possessed by a demon, and now she's just a lesbian. Okay. At least the movie is trying. You know, there are, like, these moments where I feel like the movie was trying, but then like, you have these really long, awkward scenes of characters saying nothing. So it's like the script sucks, but it has these like kind of clever moments and kind of like neat moments. But overall, it's a shitty script. So I wouldn't recommend this movie. You know, it's not terrible. It's just not good. You know, if you're a fan of the first movie and you have to know what happens, well, you're not going to find out what happens with the baby. You're not going to find out what happens with the cult. And really, none of it seems to have affected Nell beyond there's now a demon that's in love with her and is following her around. But beyond that, Nell like kind of becomes more of like, you know, more educated, becomes less like backwoods, simple. She throughout the movie, it seems to be that this whole being possessed thing was kind of beneficial for her as a person. But if you have to see this movie and you have to have follow up on what happened, you're not going to get it. So don't see this in theaters. Don't pay the money to see this in theaters as I did. Just wait until it's on TV. Rent it from a Redbox, you know, or fucking download it or something. But don't pay full price for this movie. It's not worth it. We're gonna get more of these, and they're gonna get shittier. Or maybe we're gonna have a very cool experimental franchise where like the first one's the found footage one, the second one is the boring, often awful one, and then the third one's the one that takes place in space and it's like the best thing ever. Who knows? But I do want to end this video. I want to end this review. Okay, overall, my thoughts on The Last Exorcism Part 2. I know this is kind of a jamble of a review, but again, I saw this movie last night, and I don't really remember that much about it. But this movie is just not good. It's just not worth it. Not worth seeing in theaters, at least, or even at a matinee, because like, don't waste the gas. Just wait for it to be on TV or like Redbox or something, and you know, if you're out shopping one day, it's like, oh, The Last Exorcism's out on, or The Last Exorcism Part 2 is out on Redbox. Hey, we'll rent it. Oh, it sucked. Oh, at least we only spent $1 on it. You know, do something like that. Don't actually like bother to go out and see this movie in theaters. But I want to end this review talking about, and I'm not going to do this often, but I want to talk about the trailers I saw before the movie. And when I say I want to talk about the trailers, I want to talk about 2 trailers. I want to talk about the Evil Dead trailer, and then I want to talk about the Conjuring trailer. The Evil Dead trailer, while it does not look like a bad movie in and of itself, when you call that movie Evil Dead, everything about that trailer looks wrong. Okay? It looks too fucking clean, too fucking polished. It's too much like a music video. It's too much like a modern horror film. The original Evil Dead, and I'd even say Army of Darkness and Evil Dead 2. Said that in the wrong order. But those movies, they don't have a feel of a specific era. They feel kind of timeless, you know? Whereas this new Evil Dead movie feels like a movie that was made in the last 5 years. And that's bad, because in 10 years, it's going to feel dated. So that is irksome. And like, everything just looks very plasticine. Everything looks very just overproduced and overplanned. And the first movie in that whole series has this kind of like chaotic lack of, you know, kind of everything, consistency, logic, continuity. But the thing is, that works for those films. That's like kind of, those qualities are, they help create like the intrinsic chaotic nature of those movies. So making this clean, crisp, you know, very nicely packaged version of Evil Dead just strikes something something is fucked up there. Something is wrong there. It strikes of someone who probably does not understand the original Evil Dead being tasked with making the remake of the Evil Dead movie. I don't care if Rob Tappert, Sam Raimi, or Bruce Campbell say this is a good movie, and I don't care if anybody is saying this is like the early reviews are apparently like very, very positive on this movie. I don't care. I will never care, because this movie is wrong. This movie is not Evil Dead. It's not, okay? It is a crisp, clean imitation of Evil Dead. It is like The Last House on the Left remake. It has excised all of the grit, all of the dirt, all of the grime, all of the charm, essentially, from the film to create a product. And it could be a good movie. Again, it could be a good movie. But it's wrong. It's not doing it right. It's taking a title and completely abandoning everything that made that title special. And so I will see it, and I will probably not like it. So look for that review. But the Conjuring trailer. This is the best trailer I've seen in a very long time. This movie, and this is James Wan, who did Saw, fucking Dead Silence, Death Sentence. I haven't seen Dead Silence or Death Sentence. I think I would like Death Sentence because I like revenge movies. But most importantly, he did Insidious. Insidious is a fantastic film. It's not a perfect film. It's not, it has some moments and some holes here or there. But Insidious is a really good movie. It's a really effective movie. And James Wan has proven he's actually not a bad director. And this Conjuring trailer is fantastic. If you have not seen this trailer, go watch it. This movie's gonna be good. I hope, at least. If it's written by the Hayes brothers, Chad and Chris, who did that awful goddamn House of Wax remake, and I think they wrote the Prom Night remake, which is also a problem. But I think James Wan, I think Lee Linnell, because Lee Linnell has been his butt buddy since college, so for like not 30 years, for like 20 years they've been best friends. I think Lee Linnell has rubbed off enough on James Wan that James Wan, if he is given a bad script, will and fix it. I hope. So, really looking forward to The Conjuring. Looks really good. Not looking forward to the Evil Dead remake. Don't fucking see The Last Exorcism 2, but go out and rent the first one. Go out and see The Last Exorcism. It's a pretty good movie. That's my review of The Last Exorcism 2. Don't see it. Next week will be the Oz the Great and Powerful. Or as it should be called, Oz the Great and Terrible. But, I really expect a modern screenwriter to know the proper title, The Wizard of Oz. Yeah, right.